All right, welcome back, everyone. We are going to do a little list review here. I'm joined by Alex, who is playing in an upcoming tournament with the 1500 max points. He's taking his Lizardmen, and you can see on screen his full army that he's taking to the tournament. Alex, why don't you walk us through what's in it and why?
From the bottom, 14 skinks with scout, javelins and shields. Then a Carnosaur with a great weapon, Talisman of Protection and a shield, an ancient Stegodon, 3 Kroxigor with a champion, another 10 skinks just with javelins and shields, a Slann with battle magic, lore familiar, ruby ring, and battle standard bearer, and um, higher state of mind. I think it's called the ethereal discipline. 10 Saurus Warriors, vanilla, so heavy armor and shield, really, hand weapons, and 3 jungle swarms.
Just moving on to this. So these are kind of like your key pieces, really. Why don't you walk us
Yeah.
through what they are, what they do, and why you're taking them?
I think that probably have to be prepared for definitely for level 4 magic, and also even at 1500 points, dragon or dragon type creatures. So I've been running or trying to run the dragon slaying sword and didn't find it that great. And especially at 1500 points, I don't think you can justify 50 points or really kitting out your entire Slann to just deal with that threat by itself. So you can spend a lot of points or not on the Slann, but I think if you don't take it, there's not a lot of other options really. You could take an old blood instead on a Carnosaur, but I don't think the skink heroes are that fantastic. So I've gone pretty much all in. A battle magic Slann, I think, is the most general application. You could take a cheaper one with high magic, but I want a battle magic. I think it's just got powerful spells that I could choose with Lore Familiar, put Ruby Ring on it. I look, the main point with it, I don't think it's necessarily going to make 430 points back all the time, but the ethereal has been the best ability so far. Even when there's an answer to it, it's not going to be a majority of what the opponent has. So I think there's a good chance you can save a lot of points with this line as well. The leadership is a big deal too. And the idea here is it's going to sit in the middle, relatively invulnerable to many things, and just sort of drift ahead and then weigh in, add +2 to a combat at the end. So the Carnosaur, you can go a bunch of different ways. I like the Scar-Vet version anyway. It really maxes out the points for characters at this point. A great weapon's cheap. You could Talisman of Protection. I've been convinced to take. That's where most of the wounds are. I think you got to take it, and I fit in just a shield to get a 4+ save as well. I wish I could afford something like Armour of Meteoric Iron, but I can't really. I think an Ancient Stegodon is also automatic. The Strength 6 attacks, plus all the other things that it gets. I think you really need it to add some punch at the end. And 10 skinks. I mean, we can talk more about skinks in the next slide, but they're really non-negotiable. And especially the ones that can give Scout or Vanguard to get ahead.
Just on the Carnosaur quickly before we move on. I know you say you need to have some sort of dragon mitigation. It's pretty good, but it's not a dragon. Will you be like hunting dragons with it, or like using it as a roadblock, or like is the ideal
I
situation?
assume there's, yeah, not, I don't think there's going to be too many dragons. I just want to be prepared if there is one. I think it's pretty good against cavalry, high strength. It's tough to kill with the wounds. So there's a default deployment plan, but this is probably the most variable piece in there, really. Like if there's a dragon, I'll need to hold it back as something of a deterrent. If there's not, it's the fastest moving thing in the army that kills things. So that's going to be a big part of how I sort of justify the last slide.
And is it? I think it's only like 300 points or something, isn't it? 290.
Yeah, this one comes in under 300,
Yeah, that's
296.
cheap. Very cheap. This next slide, you've got 10 Saurus and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 more skinks.
Yeah, so you got to take the Saurus. I've tried all the different configurations. I honestly just think it's a shame they're just attacks. Like it's not just Saurus. It's the infantry's not very good and heavy infantry's the worst because you're just paying so much for what amounts to a rank bonus in the end. They hopefully they deal some damage and maybe they will. There's one scenario where they could possibly control the building or the key feature in the middle. That might be their best use, but I just haven't seen them even in large blocks do well. And the smaller the points count, the harder that's going to be to justify. I think I don't know. We're still answering the question: how many skinks is too many? Even though I own about 40 or 30 with javelins and 10 with blowpipes, I'm just going with two sets at this point. I didn't really like having three, even at 2000, mostly because you can't. You just need to kill things, and the core, as you see, sort of comes out that it's just not there's just infantry that doesn't do a lot of damage. And so you're relying on the other things to do damage. So if you take up too much of that space with skinks, even though they're incredibly good and efficient at what they do, they don't drop like everything. You need them to set up attacks for other units that are going to hit harder as well.
And that, I presume, looking at this, leaves a little bit more room in core. So you've got 4 more skinks, some jungle swarms, which jungle swarms are core, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
core.
So tell us just about those two first, and then we'll move on to the Kroxigors.
Yeah, ultimately you're just looking at some variation, and you can pay more for Saurus, but the last 5, 6-ish units that came up, I just think you sort of have to play, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room left. So these units are now role players. So you're going to have the Carnosaur and the Stegodon. You really need to do damage because the 2 units of Skinks and the Saurus are not going to do too much, and the Slann's not going to be that reliable. I think ultimately it can be pretty variable what you're going to get from that game to game, but you really need it to counter the magic on the opposing side and provide that sort of stabilizing presence with leadership. I think here I really like I guess the game they played with Swarms, they were good. They're expensive to some extent, but the vanguarding and the tar pit side of nature, you can get that from a Bastiladon maybe or from some other things, but you really want to pay for it out of core. And I think it's just cheaper. They're probably going to die. But I think adding a bit more there fills out the 375 points I need without sort of investing in just more Saurus that I don't think are going to be able to do a lot anyway.
And those 4 skinks, I presume, just go. You're having 2 units of 12? Is that how you're running them?
No, I'm going to put 14 ahead
14,
in the scouting unit. Yeah.
Okay.
So the other 10 will just screen the Kroxigor.
Yeah, right. Then tell us about the Kroxigor. Why Kroxigor instead of, say, a Bastiladon?
Yeah, I haven't. Bastiladon's more efficient points wise, but again, needing a role player and needing something that can kill things. So the Bastiladon doesn't really do that. It's slow. The games that I've played, I've found I'm wanting to get into combat faster. So having the 6-inch move range with this Kroxigor is a big deal. Having the skinks around to screen them probably means that I can charge. But ultimately, just having the strength 7 attacks means that I'm threatening things. Whereas a Bastiladon, with the beam, not if it doesn't go off, it isn't really killing anything. It's more getting in the way. And it's not so much like, so if you look at the other options, Cold Ones are just unreliable with stupidity and very expensive for what they do. On top of that, you've got Ripidactyls and Pterodons where you need that skink hero anyway. I would interestingly consider Ripidactyls in this role because of the points cost, but I've found I can afford the 150 points here to sort of run this unit where their toughness 4 is a problem, but I just need something else that can to hit things really because my core is made up of things that don't kill a lot.
Yeah, it's remarkable that something like a Kroxigor is toughness 4. It just feels so weird. Strength 7's great, but a giant crocodile.
Yeah, I mean, if they're
4
toughness
just feels
5, they would be
yeah,
extraordinary, really.
they would.
Like they need something like that.
So this is, again, back to that first shot. So this isn't just your full list. This is what you were telling me before, that this is probably a general deployment plan. Walk us through what the strategy is here.
Yeah, I guess you have to have this. And unfortunately, when I thought about putting this together, I don't have a lot of options because in my experience, the Lizardmen will come out of the gates, the Skinks, and the fireballs from the Slann will do some damage, but in the end, they've got a lot of above average units, but not a lot of slam dunk killer units or hammers at the end, because you'll find that they just can get charged more than you can charge them. Their ranges are just a little bit too short against cavalry or say large flying monsters. But the gist really is to just go for giving up one flank and going hard on the other one. So the Saurus and the swarms on the left are probably just like a roadkill. So those swarms are a great tar pit, being unbreakable, being vanguarding and skirmishing. They can get ahead, block anything for a bit, but they're probably going to drop dead. The Saurus, I don't know what to expect, but I can't rely on them to do anything. So they're probably the next in line there to just hold something down. Whereas on the right side of things, the Carnosaur is the fastest, the Stegodon after that, and have the Kroxigor trailing behind the Skinks that are deployed in front of them. I'm hoping that in a generic setup that those scouting Skinks would also be on this side so that there's a chance of winning things there quickly and turning back in, because the Slann is good enough to move around. That 8-inch movement is pretty good for just being able to stay behind things and move forward. It's not a lot more early on, but then later on, if it needs to get stuck in and help out, like the Kroxigor, for example, it can provide +2, use hammer hand, maybe get something going just to win a combat.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I love the screening rule for Kroxigors and Skinks, that interaction, how tiny little Skinks can screen for the Kroxigors and the Kroxigors can then just charge straight through them. I think it's pretty thematic for the Lizardmen list. But I'm interested to see how that goes. And
yeah, well,
around,
the idea is that they flee in front of something, I suppose. So like they block from being charged and then they get charged and flee, or they just continue to shoot poison arrows at things or javelins. So it's worked before. I'm pretty confident it's good. It's just they are like the Kroxigor are like a bit of a glass cannon. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, interested to see how you go. We'll have a little recap and speak to you about how the tournament goes, what you came up against, and whether it was a hardcore competitive list or some people were taking some fluff for the fun of Warhammer. But interested to see how it goes. So thank you, Al, and thank you everyone for watching. If you've got any feedback, please leave us a comment. We're learning this on the run, so happy to take any constructive criticism on, and yeah, we'll be back again soon. Thanks.
Thanks.